Howdy, it's Jim Morado, and this is the middle of November 2023. We're at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum in Atlanta, Georgia. And our timing, it was interesting timing on this particular day. We stopped by, we visited, and just a couple of days later, Rosalynn Carter passed away at 96, and that was very sad. But I'm obviously she lived a good, long, full life, and that's definitely something to be known for. And of course, Jimmy Carter at this moment is still alive at 99 years old, though he is working with hospice. And if you saw any of the videos on TV, showing Mrs. Carter's funeral, he's in a wheelchair, and he's just not looking as good as he did a few years ago, and that's it's just very sad. Jimmy Carter is one of the presidents that I feel very connected to. And, no matter what your political party is or your affiliation, Jimmy Carter was a good man. He, obviously one-term president, and a lot of people rank his presidency as, not quite towards the top of the list of presidents, to be nice. Kind of like Abe Lincoln, kind of like Grant. He was a very self-made person, and just a decent person with a good heart, who continued to serve even after he was president. And I have a lot of admiration for Jimmy Carter, for Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter. And I just wanted to say that we were here just a few days before that happened. And back in 2015, and by the way, I'm showing a lot of stuff. Feel free to mute me out. I won't be offended. I kind of want to give you a lot for your money when you watch one of my videos, so I'm going to talk about one thing but show you something else. Feel free to read about what we're looking at. A whole lot of cool relics here. I love the fact that at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum, there's stuff to read, but then they've also got some cool relics. They've got cool things to look at. They've got historic objects like that. They've got his personal ring, report cards, salt and pepper shakers. There's so much to look at. Later on, we'll see some gifts from other people that were given to President Carter. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my own personal experience with Jimmy Carter. And I hope you don't mind, but you may know that the Carters were members of their little church in Plains, Georgia, and Jimmy Carter taught Sunday school. And how humble is that? Here's a guy who was the President of the United States, and he goes back home, he does his thing, volunteers with Habitat, and he also teaches Sunday school. Just a very, very humbling. So he's teaching Sunday school at Maranatha Baptist Church. The public, for the last several years, I don't know how they've handled it over the last year or two, but I know for decades, the public could go to that church and enjoy the fact that here's a former president teaching Sunday school. So we planned a trip to go down and take advantage of that. What a rare experience, and what a just a sweet experience. I emailed Maranatha Baptist Church. Sorry, I always have trouble with that word. And I asked them, hey, we're planning on coming down on this particular weekend. Obviously, we'd like to be there when Jimmy Carter's teaching Sunday school. Does it look like that's going to happen? And I believe he was there, he tried to be there 3 out of 4 Sundays a month. and try to keep a fairly consistent schedule. So, they sent me a very pleasant email. They got right back to me and said, yeah, as of right now, he should be here. Obviously, people can get sick and that sort of thing, but as of right now, he's on the books to be here that particular day. So we planned our visit. We got a hotel room and made a nice little trip of it. We came down. Of course, if you've been to Plains, you know that the POW Civil War prison camp, Andersonville, is not that far away. It's a good trip to kind of plan, and see some Civil War sites too. We also drove by and saw the Georgia Guidestones, which of course the Georgia Guidestones were destroyed by domestic terrorists, I guess, not too long ago. So I'm glad we got to see them while we did. We went to Andersonville, and of course we went to Plains, and we also went to Americus, Georgia, which is also connected to Jimmy Carter, and just had a very nice time. Of course, there is the Jimmy Carter, the National Park unit. The National Park runs several things in town relating to Jimmy Carter. His old childhood home, his high school, those are all parts of the National Park Service. And of course the entire town is Jimmy Carter. It's a very small town, and everything in town is the Carters. It has some connection, and every if any place has a gift shop, or if they're selling something, it's going to be Jimmy Carter related. At his high school, which is now basically a museum to the Carters, I bought a T-shirt with the old high school logo on it, and of course it says Jimmy Carter's High School. Bought several political buttons. We had a nice time. Plains is a nice little town in its own right. It's pleasant. It's sweet. And of course, we talked to a lot of people who knew the Carters or had grown up with them, and we did not hear a negative thing from anyone. I remember there's a souvenir shop. I don't know if it's still there or not. It was ran by a very sweet couple, and it was if you're like me, I collect presidential buttons, postcards. I'm big into history, especially presidents, and they had pretty much anything presidential you might want. They had challenge coins. A really, really cool place. And my wife had to drag me out of there. It just a cool shop for someone into history like myself. And of course, lots of peanuts. They had lots of peanuts, and we bought peanuts, and we brought a lot of friends back home. We brought them back peanuts from Plains, Georgia. But the main event was going to church with Jimmy Carter. So probably, I don't know, a couple of hours before church started, we read online, you need to get there early. There is secret service and that kind of thing. And I want to say the day we were there were several hundred people that showed up, to go to church and hear Jimmy Carter teach Sunday school. And we got there. As we pulled into the parking area, there was they had I assume bomb sniffing dogs that kind of sniff around your car, and they were very friendly. It was very pleasant. The guy kind of waved at us and stopped. His dog went around the car and he waved us through, and then we went and parked. We went up, got in line for church, and they have Secret Service there. I think there was a metal detector, and the Secret Service. There's Amy. Very sweet Secret Service. I've never had an unpleasant interaction with Secret Service, and usually they've got a pleasantness to them. That's been my experience. But yeah, the Secret Service were nice. They kind of checked things out, looked in bags, looked in purses, and you went on into the church. They told you where to sit, and you sat there. And once things got underway, I think Sunday school started at 10, maybe church started at 11, and my times might be off a little bit there, but Yeah, an hour or so before the Sunday school lesson, a friend of the Carters, her name is Miss Jan, and I think she had been one of Amy's teachers in grade school. But she came out and did kind of a here's what's appropriate, here's what's not appropriate, and she made it clear that don't walk up to the Carters, don't ask for autographs, you know, pretty much be cool. I guess you might say. And it was, I know we read online about Miss Jan, and people had described her as a bit of a drill sergeant. And, she was to the point, but it was almost like she was doing stand up. She was very funny, and obviously had given that speech many times. And, she just kind of did here's what's okay to do, here's what's not okay. I hope I don't know if Miss Jan's still around or not, but I hope she writes a book if she is, because I bet she's got some good stories. And she even talked about how people, would go to do their photo op with the Carters and maybe try to hold up a sign or something stupid like that. And she also talked about reporters coming to church for a story. And it was just interesting hearing her talk. But she gave a little spiel about what to do and what not to do, and it was very interesting. And then I guess towards the end of her talk, and Jimmy and Rosalynn kind of show up, and they take their seats and said hello to some people. Miss Jan said that it was okay to take photos during Sunday school when Jimmy would ask, like, where you from? During that portion, it's okay to take pictures. After that, don't. And that was that. So Jimmy Carter came out, started Sunday school, asked where people were from, and I do remember somebody said they were from Washington D.C., and he very in classic Jimmy Carter style said, "Oh, yeah, I lived there for a little bit," which got a laugh from everyone. And he did a really nice he did a Sunday school lesson about how being a Christian and also being a scientist, for him, there's no conflict there. And it was a very sweet lesson, to be honest. It was just nice, pleasant, sweet. He mentioned he'd been to I think L.A. the night before to give Bob Dylan an award, and he'd gotten home at 2:30 a.m. and he still came to church to teach Sunday school, because that's the kind of tough guy he is. Of course, it was a great lesson. The preacher of the church, I believe, was in his 30s and was from Louisville, and I remember thinking, wow, you're following Jimmy Carter. That's a tough act to follow, but man, he did it. I remember him. He had a good service too, and lasted about an hour. I do know somebody told me they were a little offended. I think the church passed the collection plate around twice, maybe once in Sunday school, once during the church service. They thought that was a bit excessive. I did not, and I was very okay with being generous with my donations that particular day. The Maranatha Baptist Church obviously has a lot on their plate, and I'm sure that with Jimmy working with them, I'm sure they were doing a lot of good stuff even outside of church. You could order a recording, a DVD copy of Jimmy Carter's lesson that you attended, and of course we did that. We still have it. It's been nice watching it over and over again, and just a nice little thing to have from that service. Yeah, so I wanted to mention that. After church, you walk out, you shake hands with the preacher, and then, if you attend Sunday school and then also attend the church service, you can get your picture taken with the Carters. And of course, that is one heck of a souvenir, and a family thing to keep around for years to come and to pass down for generations. It's a very cool thing to have. So after church, you kind of line up, and man, was the Secret Service and the church staff, this wasn't their first rodeo. They knew how to do things, and it was so impressive because you've got things to do. You're on vacation. They could have dragged this out and made this a 2-3 hour thing, but they had people line up. If you were a part of a group, you lined up over here, you lined up over there. They told people, you get one photo. Don't do, you're not getting one photo with this person, then another photo with that person. They made it clear that they were efficient and they expected everyone else to be efficient, and I appreciated that very much. So we got into a line which moved super quick. You got to the front, there were a couple of people, you handed one your camera. If they had a question, they'd ask you. You kind of ran up to the Carters and stood next to them. They took a picture, and then boom, you were gone. And Miss Jan said before this started, don't put your hands in your pockets, don't try to shake hands. Really, this is, she kind of made it clear, you need to be quick, efficient, and don't be stupid. And so everybody was pretty much following those rules. Of course, you want to say something. It's President Jimmy Carter and his wife. This is a big deal. So as we stood there and got our picture, and we were next to him 10-15 seconds, if that. But I just said, this is a huge honor for us. Thank you for doing this. And Jimmy and Rosalynn both kind of looked over and said, well, thank you for coming out today. We're glad to have you here. And you know that they say that probably hundreds of times every single Sunday, but they said it with such sincerity. It was just very, very sweet. Not to get too much into it, but my wife, through some personal connections, she has dealt a lot with Secret Service. And she has another side story about Rosalynn Carter that was, she's dealt with several people. She met Jill Biden not too long ago. Back when she was the vice president's wife and not the president's wife. She's been in the same room with both Bushes and a couple of vice presidents. She's also got some stories about the Secret Service and dealt with Secret Service quite a bit too. And just as a side note, she's had very pleasant interactions with the Secret Service. I just thought I'd mention that. And of course, if you collect autographs, the Carters were if you collect presidential autographs, presidential related autographs, the Carters were very easy autographs to obtain. And of course, you couldn't get an autograph while you attended church with them, but I know for years, if you sent them one of their books through the mail with a self-addressed stamped envelope, they would autograph them for you. But obviously, that speaks to their character, that speaks to who they were. They were accessible. They had their Secret Service, of course, but they were still about, I don't want to say they were, common people, the common man, but they were about as much as you could be after being president. And again, with them both, publicly appearing at church and responding to mail that they received, they were sweet people. I know if you collect autographs, try to see how hard it is to get a Bill Clinton autograph. I mean, it's or a Obama autograph, or if you wanted to meet them, how hard would that be? But you could meet Jimmy Carter, Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter, for years, and I just think that's sweet. Cool memorabilia here at the museum. I know I have not talked much about it. Kind of got sidetracked on the story about going to church with the Carters, but I think that's a sweet story. And I think it's sweet that Jimmy taught Sunday school and that anybody could go and sit in Jimmy Carter's Sunday school class. And I love the awards he's won and that are on display here at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum. Nobel Peace Prize. That's I had to stop for a moment. I had to do the selfie thing with that. I thought that was just too cool. And that absolutely is Jimmy Carter. We're leaving, heading back to through Atlanta. Briefly thought about trying to go to the Capitol and their history museum, but we were driving to Marietta, a little town I love very much, so we didn't. Anyway, do you have any Jimmy Carter stories? I'd love to hear from other people that have Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter stories, or that have been to the museum or to Plains, Georgia.